Aung San Suu Kyi was free to leave her house after 7 long years, and her supporters still can't get enough of her.
Thank you very much for seeing us.
It's exhilarating, but even in the sweltering heat, she manages to stay cool.
I know it's the most turgid and obvious of questions, and you've been asked it anyway several times in the last few hours, but how does it feel? How does it really feel inside you that you don't have to be restricted to a set of walls, that you can go out and see people, your own people?
I've said this before, and I don't know if people really believe me, but it's the absolute truth. I've always felt free. Being shut up in the house didn't make me feel very restricted. I had my books. I was very lucky, after all. It's not like being in prison. You're in your own house. You can read. You can listen to the BBC, and you can listen to music, and you have things to do in the house. Keeps you occupied. So I never felt I was not free. I suppose you could say that I depended a lot on inner resources. And the main difference now is that I don't seem to have time to breathe now. Everything's happening so quickly, and so much is happening all the time.
And so many people want to see you and shake your hand, touch you. It must be also a little bit alarming sometimes, isn't it? The crowds pushing, shoving.
No, not alarming. It's very touching. Because I spoke to somebody from the BBC about it last night. A lot of the people who come to greet me and who come to just wish me well, a lot of them are obviously not very well off. And you can see that they have to lead very tough lives. Yet in spite of all their hardships, their happiness for me, their happiness because I'm free, it's very touching. It makes you understand what humility really is.
What were the circumstances under which you lived? People could come to see you from time to time, could they?
Yes. Actually, this last period of house arrest was much more relaxed than what I'd known the first time. The first period of house arrest was the most restricted. I was alone in the house. A young girl came in every day to bring me food and so on, and clean the house and things like that. But I was alone all the time, and nobody from outside was allowed to come to see me. My husband and sons were allowed in after 2.5 years or so. They were allowed to visit me from time to time. But apart from that, I only saw official people, my security officers. Yes.
Yes. Did they want to talk to you? I mean, what did they...
I had a liaison officer, and he came at least once a month, and we talked to each other. He was a rather nice person.
So, what did you talk about? About politics, or about your position as a prisoner?
Oh, we talked about very practical things, because he had to look after my day-to-day interests, shall we say, about if the house, there's something needed doing in the house, or if I needed to see a doctor, things like that.
So not the grander issues of where Burma goes and what the government does?
Well, I tend to speak my mind quite often, and so I would tell him what I thought of what was going on. But usually I did it in what I hope was a friendly way. For example, I remember once he had a sore throat. He was suffering from a sore throat when he came to see me. And I said, what happened? And he said that he'd been giving a lecture at some government-run academy. And he said, I must have been standing in a draft or something like that. And I said, no, you know why you've got a sore throat? Because you were probably saying things that are not true. And so I would tease him a little like that, and he would laugh. But a little uncomfortably, I must say.
Yes. And the second period, this latter period, was because of this American man who swam across the lake.
This was the last bit, but I'd been under house arrest since 2003. This is after the business at Yin,
yes.
When I suppose I was imprisoned for getting beaten up. I shouldn't have got myself beaten up, should I? Or rather, I shouldn't have allowed my my supporters to get beaten up. Probably that was my crime. Anyway, that was when they put me into insane jail, and after that they sent me back to the house. But the last period was because they said that I'd broken the rules of the terms of the detention.
Because somebody else
Yes,
chose to
because
swim.
I hadn't handed him over to the police.
Why didn't you hand him over?
As a matter of principle, I thought that so many of our people were in prison and none of them had had a fair trial, and I just couldn't bring myself to hand anybody over to the authorities.
What did you think about the man himself? I mean, was he a bit deranged?
I wouldn't say deranged. He was a little eccentric, but I don't want to say anything against him.
So now it's finished and you can look back on it, the whole experience, the 7 years and then all the years before then. It's taken a terrible toll of your personal life, hasn't it? A terrible toll in many, many, many respects. Your sons not being able to be with your husband and so forth. I mean, it must have been a very hard time.
I don't feel that I've suffered greatly, because there's so many others who have suffered much more than I have, and I really don't think I have suffered terribly. I've missed my family greatly, of course, but that is, I wouldn't call that a suffering. I think that is just something that happens if you're fond of people and you're not allowed to be with them.
But it must have been a very difficult decision not to leave the country, to go with your husband, to go and see your husband when he was dying.
Yes, that is a difficult decision, but he knew that that was the decision I would make, and he was fully supportive up to the last moment.
And that was the right decision, was it?
I think it was the right decision. It was a sad decision, but it was the right one. And I think he felt exactly the same.
What was the last communication you had with him before he died?
I spoke to him on the telephone, and he was always trying to find cheerful things to say to me on the telephone, such as how nice his sons are to him and so on.
How long was that before he died?
That was just about a few days before he died.
And your sons have suffered. They must have suffered from having a family that was so broken up.
Yes, I think my son suffered. I wouldn't claim that I've suffered, because after all, I was just doing what I chose to do. They asked this question at the press conference yesterday, one of the Burmese reporters, how I felt about the fact that I'd made so many sacrifices. And so I said to them that I don't look upon anything that happened as a sacrifice, because it was a choice. It was a choice I made, and whatever I chose to do, I must take responsibility for whatever happens as a result of that choice. But I think my sons did suffer. It wasn't their choice. It was a choice I made. But I think the breaking up the family meant that they suffered as a consequence.
And you've spoken to your younger son, Kim, haven't you?
I've spoken to both of them.
Yes. By phone, presumably.
Yes.
One of the things I wanted to ask you, I mean, mobile phones have really taken off everywhere while you've been in prison. What did you think when you saw this little thing to speak on?
I was a little surprised. I mean, it started at my gate, all these mobile phones, people holding them up to take photographs and so on. I was surprised that there were so many of them. And when I spoke to my son in Bangkok, it was the first time I'd ever handled one, and I didn't really...
You've never had a mobile phone?
No, I'd seen people. When I say people, I mean my security officers using mobile phones, but I'd never handled one before. Of course, I've seen them in photographs in the news magazines, but it felt very inadequate to me. It was so small, and there was no mouthpiece. And I didn't know whether to keep it near my mouth or near my ears, or you just keep shifting it around. And everybody kept assuring me, go on, it's all right, you can say what you want and he'll hear you perfectly well.
There's been an explosion, of course, of phone ownership in Burma.
Everywhere, I believe.
Yes. The internet, have you been able to use the internet?
No, not at all. I'll have to, I think one has to make an application.
Oh, I see.
If you want to set it up in your home.
Will you make an application?
Yes, I will.
What will be your relationship with the government want now that you're a free person once again?
It depends on them as much as on me. I would like it to be a good relationship, but whether or not that's what they want is another matter.
Well, they've obviously got some reason for freeing you, because they could have extended your order, they could have invented something to keep you in jail.
A little bit difficult to invent more reasons for keeping me under arrest, because already I was 18 months over the time when I should have been kept under house arrest.
But they could have done it.
And they could have done it if they wanted to. But I think it would have been a little difficult finding plausible reasons.
So why did they let you go? I mean, apart from it being difficult to keep you, why should they just say, okay, fine, go out into the open, speak as you like?
I don't think it was quite like this, okay, go out and do what you want. It was really rather like, well, that's it. Are we going to go to all the trouble of trumping up another charge, or do we just let her go? And I think they came to the conclusion that perhaps it is less trouble just to let me go.
But you're a terrible danger to them, aren't you?
No, I don't think so. That's what they think. Why should I be a danger to them?
Well,
I don't wish them ill.
But for being who you are, and for having a big organisation, big party organisation, of people who really admire you and will follow you, and an opposition in general, whether the opposition is always in tune with you or not, nevertheless, I mean, you're a major figure in the life of every single opposition person. And now you're out in the open.
But I don't think they should think there's anything to fear in this, because whatever influence I have, I would use to protect their rights as much as I would use to protect other people's rights.
Dictators don't always see it in that kind of light.
No, they may not see it that way, but certainly this is how I feel, and I think there are some among them who do know that I would consider it their right to justice. I would consider that their right to justice is every bit as strong as mine.
Can I ask you a fairly crude question, a sort of basic question, which might get you into trouble if I ask, but do you want to see the military government fall?
I don't want them to fall. I don't want to see the military falling. I want to see the military rising to dignified heights of professionalism and true patriotism.
And do what?
And do what is best for the country and what the people want. I think it's quite obvious what the people want. The people just want better lives based on security and on freedom. I've spoken to a lot of people, and I usually ask them, what is it you want most? And some of them say, I want to be free. Some say I want some sense of security, financial security as well as personal security. So that's what it all comes down to in the end, two things, freedom and security. And this is what needs to be balanced finally in any society. And I think too often the authorities in Burma keep using security as an excuse for depriving the people of the basic freedoms to which they should be entitled.
But these changes couldn't come while the military government's in power, could they?
I would like the military government to take the initiative. I would like them to be the people who have decided that our country has a right to certain standards of freedom, to certain standards of security. Well, I want them to be the heroes. Why not? It would give them a sense of confidence. It would heal the wounds of the nation. And I think we'd all get on a lot better if they were the ones who brought true democracy to Burma. But, of course, things don't always work out like that. You usually have to work for freedom. It's not simply given to you.
In some countries there have been what people have called velvet revolutions. Is Burma the kind of country that might have a velvet revolution or something rather tougher and harder?
I have to confess that I don't quite associate velvet with the military, but it would be nice if this kind of thing could happen. And apart from the fact that I think it would be nice, I think we also have to try to make this kind of thing happen.